What is the worst thing you have found on someone else's phone? Story 1. Had a client showing me a picture of a haircut they wanted. I was hovering behind him as he was flipping through pictures, and the next one to the haircut ended up being what I assumed was him, but his wide open and googly eyes on his cheeks, bent over like the meme. This was the day I learned never look at the phone until the customer has their picture up and ready. Story 2. Photos of my own diary. My ex-boyfriend had taken pictures of every entry from when I was a kid and sent them all to my parents. Story 3. Multiple messages on various chat apps on ex's phone. Not just messages to other women, but also chatting with teenage girls in explicit and derogatory ways. Also, trying to meet up with a 16-year-old. When confronted, he said he was never going to act on any of it. And it was my fault as the relationship was going downhill and he was sexually frustrated. Oh, and photos of me naked and passed out very early in the relationship. Story 4. I used to work with a chick who took her husband's phone to work by mistake. While showing a bunch of people photos of her kids, she stumbled across a nature folder and clicked it. The folder was full of child. I watched as the blood drained out of her face and she became visibly pale and then sick. She threw up. I've never seen someone's emotions, skin color change up so quick. It scared the shiz out of me. I remember hearing her scream and cry while talking to the cops. When her husband arrived with her phone, they slapped the cuffs on him and he confessed on the spot. Story 5. My ex-wife's iTunes on her iPhone was actually my account that I set up for my iPad. She was just too lazy to set up a new account. So I told her if she did that, her iMessages would come through to my iPad. She said she didn't care until she started cheating on me and I got the texts directly to my iPad. Story 6. My boss was computer illiterate. One day she asked me to help fix something on her cell phone. She did this from time to time. Fix her phone and her kid's phone. One day she asked me to change how messages appear. She gives me a phone and in her messages is a message that says, "Stay the F away from my husband. You were just a for him to F and I won't let you hurt our family anymore." Not entirely sure if she sent it or received it. Either way, yikes. Story 7. I had just finished having sex with my GF at the time. Literally, right after finishing, she turns over and sends a text, then got up to go to the bathroom. The person responded with, "So you finished up with him, when is he leaving?" It was the dude she was cheating on me with. Story 8. When I worked at a movie theater, a customer came up to scan his digital ticket. He accidentally swipes the image of the ticket into a really high-def pic of a with presumably coming out of it. All he could say was, "Oh wow. How did that get there? Ha ha." Story 9. I was helping a tech-challenged friend move everything from an old phone to a new one. His most recent photo was his hard against the bong we all shared when we smoked at his place. I no longer use his smoking devices. Story 10. Not me, but a bartender friend of mine found a phone unlocked on the bar and couldn't locate its owner, so he punched in his own phone number and found out he was already in the contacts as Creepy J. Story 11. A friend once handed me a thumb drive to get a document. It had several full frontal nudes of him. He was, and is, a large-built man. Think of a moderately tall Oompa Loompa. Fat hides a lot of your pecker, but there was still a bit of it sticking out. Story 12. Before we were dating, my girlfriend showed me a conversation from Tinder with a guy who wanted to pay to sniff her feet. She never actually met up with him, but would kinda string him along a bit because the messages were funny to read. Anyway, I scrolled down just a little and he said something like 1K to sniff your. Story 13. An old friend of mine called me frantically requesting I come to his house because he needed a witness. He feared his then wife was about to call cops and accuse him of domestic violence. I could hear her in the background screaming, "Jose, don't believe him." I don't live close, but I was concerned and drove over. They live in a cul-de-sac and I could hear the screaming before I got in the door. When I opened the door, he was at the top of the stairs trying to explain she is crazy. She was trying to explain that my friend is a pervert. So, of course, my immediate thought was he must have been caught around. Well, to my shock and disappointment, she managed to yank the phone from him and she immediately started scrolling to pictures. She had to show me to convince me that my buddy I have known for over a decade is a pervert. She showed a pic. I was like, gross but okay. He started yelling, "That isn't me." Which made me even more uncomfortable because now my buddy is admitting to receiving pics. No. He had taken the picture and had sent it to his wife's co-worker's daughter. She was 12. I had always believed that had I ever confronted a child predator, that I would f him up. I didn't. Instead, I made sure his wife was able to call the cops without him trying to stop her. Story 14. I was excited to tell the story about how my date handed me his phone to show me a picture, and it was followed by about 10 pics of different. He was a rugby player and apparently he left his phone on the bus. This is what his teammates did to his unattended phone. Story 15. Images from a hidden camera in my office. So, we're a small enough company, only 6 in total. I run the company for my boss. He was in one day and was mentioning that his app for the cameras, ones I knew about, weren't working to view live. So, I offered to take a look for him to see what the issue was. Not 2 minutes into trying to figure out what the problem was, I stumbled upon live image captures. So nosy me clicked in, and to my disbelief I found image captures from my office. The fisheye distortion also confirmed that it was a hidden camera, as we don't have that issue with any of the other cameras. This happened a couple of months ago. I still haven't confronted him about it. I took pictures from my phone of his phone with the images on it if he ever tried to deny it. Funnily enough, I handed in my notice this week to start up my own company, and he made me leave Friday and doesn't want to pay me the 4 weeks notice I'm due. So might be time I brought up the camera. Story 16. A relative bought a second-hand phone online and I was tasked with fixing it as it still had photos on. They had videos and photos which included terrorist material. It was still linked to the old owner's Google Drive. We called the police and they said it was extremely serious, took the phone and never heard anything else. Story 17. Found texts from my GF's secret lover. This was in the early 2000s when phones were still super primitive. Her phone had that Snake game on it, and mine didn't, so I would occasionally use her phone to play Snake. The game would get interrupted if someone texted though. And sure enough, while I was playing, her secret lover texted her. I saw it and then couldn't help myself and had to read the rest of the texts between them. Absolutely crushed me. Story 18. Not a phone. But I used to work IT for a mid-sized corporation. An executive handed me his computer once to fix some issue and had left open a spreadsheet with every employee's pay. A rough way to find out I was the lowest paid person in the company. But good motivation to move on. Story 19. When I was a kid way back when, I often borrowed my mom's phone to play some games on it and would occasionally snoop around. One time I checked her texts and saw that she had gotten a bunch of death threats from what I assume was a former employee in her company since she worked in HR. I asked her about it some days later and she said not to worry and that she called our relative, who was a police officer, to help deal with it. I honestly don't know how it was resolved, but my mom didn't seem fazed at all by it. All I remember was being really scared when I first saw those texts. I immediately put the phone away and went to sleep. Story 20. Not nearly as drastic as some of these, but on my ex's kick, he was sending other, much prettier, skinnier, girls' photos of me sleeping naked. The worst photos I've ever seen of myself. And with all of them, they were making fun of me, calling me fat, ugly or gross. Really f***ed me up for a while. Story 21. Found a video on my boyfriend's phone in high school of him and his friends stomping a litter of raccoons one by one, making the others roll in the gore. It was one of the most wicked things I've seen someone do. We promptly broke up after that. Story 22. A friend's kid was playing a game on their iPad. Something went wrong, so they did what anyone would do, hand the iPad to the IT guy in the room, me, and ask what's wrong. I took a quick look and decided to open the browser to Google something. The browser has opened about a half dozen pages of. Now, this is garden variety pub type stuff, the kind of that many of us view on our own tablets. I don't have an issue with, probably, dad looking at. But knowing his kid, probably 5 to 8 years old, is one icon away from some lesbian bothered me. I closed the tabs and fixed whatever was wrong. If you've gotten this far and enjoying the content, please leave a comment of your own story. We'd love to make a video of them in the future. Story 23. My pretty tech-savvy mother-in-law had lent us my non-tech-savvy father-in-law's phone while we were visiting them. In the phone, there were text exchanges from them where she was putting him on blast for having let their marriage become an empty shell and hinted at some infidelity. A year or so later, my wife confirmed that he had probably stepped out. To this day, I don't know why she would give the phone with the undeleted messages. Maybe she wanted us to see it. Story 24. I was a personal assistant to an older gay man who ran a fancy event planning company. He was technologically challenged, so he eventually asked me to manage his emails, calls, schedule, etc. One day he asked me to help him with his personal laptop because it has a bunch of viruses or something. His computer was 90%. His search terms and videos of choice were old young gay stuff, and he was basically searching my physical description plus gay into sites. I was weirded out but kept working for him until he passed away. He may have been a weirdo, but he was a good boss, and in the end I considered him a good friend. Everyone has weird kinks in my opinion, and he was never inappropriate with me, so I didn't see it as a deal breaker. Story 25. I found out my wife is dying after I read messages exchanged between her and her sister. I guess she was too afraid to tell me just yet. I waited till she wanted to tell me on her own before I told her that I had seen the messages and had already known. Story 26. Hanging out with a work friend after work. We would have a couple beers at this restaurant and he would scroll Tinder and I would help him decide on which way to swipe. Until we saw my wife, now ex-wife. That was not a great time. Story 27. One day I came home after a night out to my boyfriend. He knew I was going to be up super late, and so he had left his laptop out for me to watch Netflix when I came back. I was watching Friends or something when, around 5 a.m., a text message popped up on his screen. It said, "Yeah, but now you're dating her." I clicked the text immediately and it opened up to a conversation he had been having with his ex-girlfriend. For months. It began before he and I even started dating, when we were still in the talking phases. Every secret I had ever told him, every trauma I had ever disclosed to him, he had texted to her while I was sleeping to make fun of me and call me names. "Listen to what the crazy told me today," he would say, telling her all the details of the extremely private things I had told him, all while telling me to my face he loved me, wanted to marry me, couldn't wait to grow old with me, etc. It took years for me to trust someone and date again after that. It was so hard to open up again, but lots of therapy helped. Story 28. My dad died about a year and a half ago in a car accident. I went through his phone after he passed and he had taken pictures of the bay near where he grew up the morning of his accident, and he had a half-written text message to me making plans to see me for Christmas. It's not like those shocking or awful things or whatever, but it's shocking and awful in a way that it's a view into a life cut short. It was 2 days before Christmas and he was reminiscing about his childhood and planning with his children, and it all just ended in the blink of an eye. It guts me every time I think about it. Story 29. Videos of my then husband descending into madness. He had gotten a traumatic brain injury, after which he took loads of videos of him going crazy. Last one, he was covered in vomit arguing with his reflection and had no idea it was him. 100% do not suggest watching someone you love like that. Trauma. Story 30. My best friend had been dating a girl. One day, I had his phone as I was fixing it for him. I was a bit of an entrepreneur, maybe not, guy in school. I was always fixing things, selling stuff and so on. Anyway, after I fixed the screen on his phone and camera, I went through some motions on his phone to make sure the screen still worked. I took a photo and then went to photos and saw everything was good. I accidentally swiped again and saw a video. He used to make lots of parkour videos back in the day, so I assumed it was one of those. It wasn't, it was a video of him forcing himself onto his girlfriend, and there were loads. In all of them she looked like she was crying in the brief snapshots I saw of them. I deleted them all off his phone and told him I had to wipe his phone because of some stupid reason. He was really angry and asked if he could get his videos back. His girlfriend at the time suddenly looked really relieved and quickly ran away. He stood there for a moment before turning to me and asked if I wiped his phone on purpose. I said I did, I saw, and that we are no longer friends. Turns out he used those videos to control her. I never considered myself to be tough or strong, but I felt quite proud at the time. Part of me wishes I had hit him, but I think I saved someone. We never spoke again. He moved schools as I think he was afraid I'd tell people. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Thread Talk for more content like this. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out. Have a dope day and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers!